We've seen a lot of those as well. So what we do is we go to a country in reality check and we try to see how was the country's history put all together. So we're somewhere up there, right? We're in 2010, we have some sort of development of multi-buildings. But, you know, that was Peru. But we started with a tradition down in the community, which is very much Inca tradition. They still operate in an Inca tradition. There is nothing wrong with it, absolutely nothing wrong with it. We just need to accept it, understand it, and make it translated into our formal rules and regulations. Then we had takeovers of the Spanish colonization with different Spanish rules and regulations of how to handle property, how to handle inheritance, how to handle ownership. Ownership, for example, during that time was only given to guys, to the head of the family, and the head of the family was supposed to be a man. That was not the case during the Inca period, but then you come to, you know, the year 2000, called to do a reform, and you're totally unaware of all these historical elements that are there, still alive. And if you're not aware of that, then you're not able to do the change appropriately. So what does reality check analysis do? We first identify and isolate the problem in terms of institutions and organizations. Sometimes the problem is just to manage, you know, everything is just there. Let's take Australia. Australia is a perfect example of a perfect property rights system, or Eastern Canada. But there is a glitch in the organization. So then we don't need to touch anything related to the history of institutions and laws and stuff, or anything of that sort. We just need to go into the organization and do, you know, consulting work. Just structure the processes within the organization and make the organization a little more agile. Then, but if it is an institutional issue, then we have to go all the way down and do the reform in an analytical way that I explained earlier. Then we check the institution's evolution through time. So we go from the initial time, as I explained earlier, and we go through this spiral effect and try to find out how many times did that bloody problem occur. Or actually, when was the first time it occurred? And then how was it resolved? And then we may notice that we have actually reminiscences of these type of resolutions and patches that happened all the time. And then we have, after we diagnose a problem, we're able to find out the exact set of questions that we need to ask. And every time they're different, in every market they're different, in every country they're different. And only if you have the right set of questions, you can get to the right set of answers. There is no such a thing as a one model fit all. And unfortunately, it's not very easy if you don't have a toolkit to go around 5 countries at a time. But if you have a principal kit, then it is easy to go to 5 countries at a time. So the key, therefore, is once you have built up that analytical element and figured out exactly who is a player in the system of property rights, then one can identify how we can align the incentives of those players and engage them into building reform partnerships. So, what did I learn while I was working at the World Bank and I tried to do this reform while I was in Peru? I learned that we couldn't structure this reform from the World Bank because although it is a very noble organization and extremely smart individuals working for it, an institutional reform can only occur if the parties in the market have a direct incentive for the change to take place. There is no such a thing as a dictating change. Like we're coming in as a World Bank and we're saying, you know, your markets don't work, your property rights are not operating very well, you really need to take care of it. Oh, sure we will, the government says. Absolutely. What's in it for the World Bank? Nothing. Right? What's in it for the task manager or the team leader to actually have these things successfully organized other than a very nice, you know, final outcome at the end of his... Am I saying something wrong and I'm tangling my shoes? I'm going to get electrocuted. So what is in it for them? Not very much, So the reform has to take place by those individuals who have an interest in it. And that's why reality check analysis identifies who will be the individuals, who are the individuals, who have you probably forgotten, because it's important to line them up. It's important to know in advance who are your enemies and who are your friends. Because only then you can actually play a nice chess game, right? So, private capital, super important. Super, super important. Because private capital cares for money making and profit making. There's nothing wrong with private capital, right? But we want to make sure that private capital does not, the moment you do your reform, does not go behind you with some sort of a government agent and aligns another deal that eliminates, that, annuls your own reform. You also want to make sure that citizens do not lobby government on their own while the government is trying with private capital to create a reform for the citizens. So this is a delicate balance we need to really make sure that we have. This is what I do for a living right now, and I have to admit, it's not an easy job, but it works. Once you see it put together, it works. And I will now get to make it a little more personalized, the story of Peru. So in 1991, I am flying into Peru, and I thought that we were doing a lot of Brady bond issuance because the country had defaulted in its foreign debt, in its sovereign debt, and we had an inflation of 1,000,000% a year, so we're talking about a hyperinflation, right? I don't know if I have anybody here that is from Latin America during that time, but I'm sorry?
I had a student there for 2 years.
You had a student there. I was impressed because we were flying there, and after the reforms were taking place, every month that I would go down, I would notice that there was a huge difference, but it was extraordinary to see it. Originally, you could not have, the depression was so strong, so bad, that people had to ration. I mean, there was rationing of the food and all of that. Really, 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 really bad. Okay, Margarita. Yes?
There were also stunning price controls on food.
Oh, but they weren't really operating at the end of the day. Yeah, there were price control. Well, it was Peru in 1990 was paying the sins of severe bad governance, not only of Alan Garcia, that was just previous that, but also Pelonze and the dictatorship and all that. So what did we do? Reality check analysis. That's what I was working on. Instead of blaming one government before the recent one, we were just deciding to identify all the problems that we had inherited. So Margarita is my sweet seamstress. She shows up one day and she tells me that I will be very happy, madame, to fix a nice little dress for you. Of course, I was the only foreigner she ever saw, so of course she was very happy to fix a dress for me. So of course, little that she knew, I was interviewing her without her realizing that I was actually not interested in just buying a dress from her.
This violates IRB.
Say that again?
This violates our human subject rules at this university.
Oh, okay. All right, so we go to, I'm finding out that Margarita is a mother of, how many did I say? It's not written there. It's a mother of 3. She was making, after the reforms, I'll tell you, because before the reforms with 1,000%, 1,000,000% hyperinflation, I can't come with a number. She was making about $80 a month. $80 a month was not bad. It was good. It was okay at the time. So she was not really the poor person. She was kind of like right above poverty line. Right above poverty line. So, after the reforms, today Margarita is actually making thousands. Margarita is not selling to Elenita, the little dress. She's selling to the United States of America. She's exporting. Peru is producing one of the best cotton, Pima cotton, ever. And they were engaged only in doing cottage industries before. Do you know what happened? Margarita managed to